All right, everybody, we are here with another episode of Your Money, Your Purpose. I am your host, Billy Zerillo, and this is a podcast all about the different things related to money, how you feel about money, how you think about money, because often those things are the things that really impact our choices. And I am super excited today because I have a very special guest, and we've been following each other on LinkedIn for a while. And like I said, I was telling her before we hit the record button, I said, I'm really excited about this conversation because so much what she talks about in her work directly impacts money choices, how we think about money, how we think about our relationship with money. And so without further ado, I am going to bring up Katarina and I'm going to pronounce your last name wrong. So
I can say Polonska. Yes. There you go.
There you go. But you're a relationship coach. You're more than that, right? But that's kind of the overarching title, so to speak. But I don't want to steal any of your thunder. So I would like for you to kind of just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Katarina and I'm a high performance relationship coach. I help executives, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs with their relationships, both personal and professional. And my method of doing that is very much looking at your individual blocks, your individual kind of roadmap, and how you relate to intimacy, how you relate to love. So it's not really couples work that I do, though I do often bring in the partner. It's more centered around the individual at hand who wants to get the help, which, guess what? Our internal blocks around love, around intimacy are going to bleed into our blocks around money. So actually before this episode, I was actually on a coaching call just now with a client of mine who we were working on his relationship, fixed the relationship with his wife. And now it's kind of bled into, okay, well, what else can you help me with? And I've been helping him with his money blocks and actually kind of leveling up in his career and moving to another stage in his entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, it's all interconnected.
Yeah. And what I love about what you do, and I want you to touch a little bit based on this because I don't know if you gave it enough justice. There's a lot of, and you talk about this in some of your posts, right? There's a difference between what you do and like the therapy, right? Like and going to see those types of people, which there's a need for that, right? But what I love about what you talk about and is how it's science-based, right? Science-backed. And I think that goes a little bit beyond just, hey, like, this is how you feel. Okay, like, so I love that you really take that approach because that's how my mind works, right? It's like our brain operates in a certain way. And so there's some science that we can use to help us overcome some of those things or address some of those things. So talk a little bit about that approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to say that therapy isn't science-backed, right? Of course it is. But to your point, I think one thing that I definitely came across in my work and that pretty much all of my clients come to with, not all of them, but a lot of them do, is you can spend years and years and years in therapy thinking you're going somewhere, but you're not really going anywhere. You're building more awareness, right? If we think about behavioral change, which is my background, I'm a behavioral scientist, we need to have 3 prongs. We need to have the awareness of the change that we need to do. We need to have the capability of actually doing the change. And then we need to have the motivation and awareness, the capability, and then we have the opportunity to actually implement the changes. And therapy, couples counselling, which, does give you some skills, but generally speaking, it's much more about the awareness building, right? It's more about kind of building the motivation of like, oh, wow, okay, I have these different problems. I have this childhood. I have these stories. I have these experiences. And that's what led me to this situation I'm currently in. So I know for myself, I've had a pretty colorful past, with being an immigrant many times over and a father who was absent for most of my life. And I did a lot of therapy thinking I'm making progress. I'm dealing with my different father wounds. I'm dealing with my different blocks and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is all I was really doing is someone called it emotional masturbation the other day. But it, kind of going in circles and circles and circles and wallowing in it and getting actually quite fixed on the identity. And a bit of a side piece, but as I did this work and as I kind of stepped up in my own identity and my own evolution, I actually lost one of my best friends in the sense of kind of like outgrowing each other, right? And I did a bit of I was quite tired last night on a ferry coming home from Sunshine Coast, and I did a bit of a little creepy social media stalk. And I was so upset to see how, I know she's in therapy. She's been in therapy for a very long time. She's in her 40s. She's been doing therapy for, I don't know, 20 years now. And I've not seen any change, like really no change. It's still kind of the same story, same status quo. And an addiction to the identity of who you are as this person who needs therapy because of X, Y, and Z problems. And again, I have clients like this. They come to me, they're like, I have very much identified with this persona. I personally found that really frustrating. And, you know, my background before I went full-time to behavioral science, and even within behavioral science, was very corporate. It was very much about sales. It was very much about kind of like meeting your KPIs, actually getting the job done. And so coming with that very go-getting driven mentality, and then finding myself doing 15 years in therapy was quite frustrating. So it all changed for me when I started taking coaching more seriously and started actually understanding the different use cases of it, right? And I'm not talking about kind of, you know, your bog standard executive coaching, but actually understanding, well, what's a more solutions driven approach to this problem, right? Do we even need the story? The lady that I trained under, my own teacher, she's very much like, we don't need the story. We just need to know what the blocks are, and we need to go and actually go in there and shift them at the root cause level. So I got really curious about behavioral change. Again, I was doing that professionally in a corporate environment. How do we change behaviors? What is the method behind that? And how can we actually make this really proactive and forward thinking? And the same with our relationships, right? No one's born as a relationship expert. Like, you know, even arguably the most securely attached, and I specialize in attachment theory, even the most securely attached people can be pretty bad at relationships down the line when bad things happen because they never learned the skills, right? They can be very secure and regulated and grounded and confident, but when it comes to actually, you know, I was going to swear there, things hitting the fan.
And you're perfectly fine to do that here too.
They don't know what to do, right? They don't know what to do. And so again, all of that to say, these are all skills that we can learn. These are all step-by-step things that we can apply to ourselves. And I'm really passionate about actually making things tangible, understandable. I like to explain why I'm doing certain things. I like to explain the science behind it. I find it actually helps people understand it and actually apply it more, right? Rather than kind of keeping it very vague and mysterious. And thus you have this kind of science-backed step-by-step process, methodology that I love to bring to all of my work. That was a really long answer.
No, I loved it. I loved every second of it because I believe it. Like I feel the same way because I think about, and it's funny, like how our own journeys led us to where we are, right? And I think about, you know, when I first became an advisor, like I was just like every other advisor, like I was collecting assets, right? And not really getting beyond that. And I started to think about my own journey with money. And I was like, started to think about like the logical things that you're supposed to do with your money. But I understood logically what to do, but there was something that was keeping me from doing it, right? Yeah. Like you know, you should be saving this amount of money. You know, you should be investing, you know, not just, in multiple different things, but there's usually, a reason why people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like getting to that, like getting to the root cause behind those things.
Yeah.
Getting to those blocks and whatnot like that. So, I love that. And so, that kind of leads me into the first question, because I love to study the mind, but I love to really think about the subconscious mind, the things that we have running in the background, right? Yeah. And that's really where I feel like we can get into trouble, especially when it comes to money, right? The subconscious thoughts that we have. And so what are some, like when you're talking to your clients, right? Or if you're going to be talking to a new client, like what are some like common money related beliefs you see people like unconsciously carrying into a relationship? Because we all do it, right? Like I have my own beliefs about money that, when I got married were a divide right at the beginning until we learned how to get past those things. But talk a little bit about that, like when you're sitting in front of these clients and, some of these clients are making good money and they've got, their careers, but there's always something running in the background.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a couple here that come to mind. One of them is on a practical level, this belief that money will solve all of the problems, right?
Yeah.
And I see that more in men. I've certainly fallen prey to this before when when building my business and could see, the revenue going up and wealth coming in. And I was like, oh, cool, this is going to fix all of the problems. And actually, I'm just going to focus more on this because in society, we're taught that money has a very clear, tangible ROI. You work hard, right? Which is also questionable, but you work hard and you make money, very clear ROI. You can do a lot of things with it. And so our brain likes to solve problems. Our brain likes to understand. It likes to solve problems. It likes them to be simple. And so it understands, okay, well, if 2 + 2 = 4, then I'm going to just follow that and do it, right? So that's one of them, that if my relationship's falling apart, it just means I have to work harder. It means I just have to go make more money, because if I can make more money, then I can be a better partner. I grew up with this belief. This is kind of what my father did. The other big belief that I was just coaching my client on right now, which is a belief that will bleed into your personal life, it'll bleed into your weight, it'll bleed into everything, is this idea around worthiness, right? And it's so cliche to talk about our self-worth. You know, it's kind of a topic that's been done to death, but I think we cannot really underestimate how potent our beliefs around our worth are. And again, taking a side, because it makes sense. The society we live in, we're being sold to 24/7. The whole marketing industry, the whole, beauty industry. There are so many things out there that are geared at making us feel worthless unless we have X, Y, and Z things. And so the belief there is like, well, I have to make money to prove my worth, and only people with money are somehow more worthy. But again, that can bleed into your romantic life, right? The two will very much play out there, of somehow I'm unworthy of having a healthy, secure, loving relationship, or I'm unworthy of having my needs met. They all interconnect. The other one is the classic, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to make X, Y, and Z money. The really big sticky one that I've certainly come across a lot, and this is probably the belief that I can see it flaring up a little bit, even now in my own work, is this idea that money has to be a struggle.
Oh, okay.
Right? Money has to be a struggle. I know, for example, this same belief with me would show up in previous relationships, this idea that relationships have to be a struggle. And come rain or shine, I had this subconscious belief that love doesn't get to just be easy. Love has to come with some kind of tension. There has to be some kind of unsafety around it, whether it's questioning my partner's motives, questioning, do they love me? Do they want to stay with me? Are they going to cheat on me? Are we going to be together forever? Are things going to go wrong? Like, really kind of this lack of safety in romantic relationship, which I absolutely, one word, and I'm so grateful. I don't have that. I worked through that. I focused on relationships for most of my life. Don't have that at all. My husband, I feel very safe, feel very secure, feel very peaceful with him. I tell all my clients, like, I don't think about my husband. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that that my real estate, my brain's doing other things, because that is such a secure, loving thing in my relationship, in my life. But this idea that money has to be a struggle, I can see that popping up a little bit, insofar as, I look at my calendar today and I'm like, it's a 10-hour day. It's a 10-hour day, and I've had 8 hours of back-to-back calls. I look at tomorrow, I'm like, oh, that's a 11-hour day. That's 9 hours of back-to-back calls. I'm like, this is interesting. So I've created this business, which is thriving and doing extremely well, but I'm tired. So what's the belief here? And then as I've been digging into this, it's like, oh, interesting. Yeah, there's a subconscious belief that I'm going to do this in real time, but like making a lot of money has to somehow be earned or hard, because there's a judginess around, well, what about those like TikTok influencers who do one reel and they make all this money? I'm like, oh no, that's lazy, right? So all of that to say, I think these beliefs can show up in so many different areas of our lives, and they're insidious, and it's like an onion, and I do this for a freaking living, and I still see them come up in myself. And it's not about arriving to this place of like full-on healing, quote unquote. It's about recognizing our own blocks and being able to move through them and clear them and kind of smash them out very, very quickly. There's a lovely saying how even the most enlightened Buddhist masters, they still get triggered. People have their stuff. They just know how to move to them really quickly and not take them so seriously, not attach their identities to them, right? So again, a really long answer. But I hope that somewhat answers your question.
No, I could just sit here and listen to you talk about this, because it is everything that I've had in my own mind, but sometimes hard to articulate. Right. But I love what you kind of were talking about at the very end, that how it just becomes, well, it's like when you were talking about just basically we're having this, like, we need to struggle in order to say, hey, we're extra worthy of this. Right. And it's funny because I see that in some of my own clients, talking to them. So there is something happening, right? And I don't know if it's because of the world we live in now, where everything seems to be so polarizing, or maybe it's coming from past generations saying, hey, like you said, like the TikTok influencer, right? It's like they're just making money doing nothing, right? And it's like, so we need to feel like we need to validate our work, because some of the work that we do isn't like a tangible thing. Like we don't produce this pen, right? And so I can't show you I produce something tangible. So in order, I need to do more because I'm producing an intangible product, right? We're working with the mind, and that does have tangible results, right, down the road. But the initial work isn't tangible, right? It's not something that you can actively see happening inside of somebody, right? That it's that deep core work, and that, so that's kind of my take on that. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
No, you're spot on, right? And it's, we've been conditioned so much in our society, which fundamentally, if we're talking to Anglo-American, listeners, it's a puritanical society or a Catholic society. I mean, neither of those are going to be really deemed making people feel really worthy and happy and full of self-love. And so there's this kind of self-flagellation that we have to struggle because we are inherently bad or inherently unworthy. I know, for example, for me, and this is very prevalent amongst anxiously attached people, I used to be very anxiously attached, that wound, that belief that I'm somehow bad at my core, which I was never aware of. But it would bubble up in the sense that, well, if someone told me off, I'd literally, my blood would run cold, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, it felt like death, someone telling me off, right? And only later in life did I realize, oh, this is a wound around being bad. So again, imagine if you have a wound around being unworthy, or a wound around not feeling good enough, which most people have, or a wound around feeling unsafe, or a wound around feeling bad, then you are going to be feeling all of that and grinding really, really hard to prove yourself otherwise. But it's kind of like a catch-22, because if the belief is that you're somehow unworthy, or somehow bad, or somehow not good enough, then nothing that you ever make will ever feel like enough. So you're just on a hamster wheel and you're going to nowhere, right? Grinding yourself into dust. Whereas the reality is, someone who doesn't have any of those beliefs or any of this wounding, they can have, they can have whatever money they have, and it's fine. I was just talking to a client now about this, and I don't know if you know Paul McKenna. I think it was Paul McKenna. He's a great hypnotherapist, and I trained in hypnotherapy back in 2007. But he's like, isn't it ridiculous how much weight and value we put on this idea of money, and how money is like this big struggle, and money's this like thing that we pine over, and we want it, and it's hard, and it's like, oh, there's so much energy behind it. And he's like, well, we need to make money neutral first and foremost. But imagine if we just neutralize the word, and instead of money, we're talking about spades. Just call it a spade. Right? So you wouldn't walk around and be like, oh, I don't have enough spades. I need more spades. Oh, it's so hard getting spades. It's not hard to get spades. Just go to the shop and buy some more spades. Right? Like, it's really not that hard. You might have to drive there, or you might, have to schlep a bit further to get to a spade store, but it's not hard. But we've made it hard. We've associated so much weight to it. And that is all conditioning, right? Because again, we live in a capitalist society that's built on scarcity, and I could go into my belief systems there, but I'm not going to get into that. Just that we are conditioned into this.
Yeah, I mean, that I just think about my own story. I just think about my parents arguing about money. It led me to have a very negative outlook on money, and I saw money as evil, right? Like, if you have it, it's going to corrupt you. It's going to make you evil. It's going to do all these things, and then finally, it was coming to the realization that money is just the energy that we give it. Right. And so if I decide to give it bad energy, it's going to produce more bad energy. But if I give it good energy, the energy that I want to see in the world, right, I'm going to be able to do a lot more good with it than so for me, it was reframing what I saw money as, right? And that goes to your point, like, hey, if it's a spade, it's a spade, right? It's not anything. It's not living, it's not breathing, it's just an object that we use to exchange value. And I think that's really powerful for everybody that's listening to hear that that, you should definitely go rewind that and listen to that, because that was really powerful. So.
Yeah. And actually, I want to just add to what you just said there, to the point of money being kind of like inanimate thing. I almost like to reframe that a little bit and say that money is a breathing entity. Like it is a fluid entity, in the sense that money is energy, right? And if we're talking about polarity, like it's more of a feminine energy, and it's meant to flow. It's meant to move. It's not meant to be held, constricted, constrained, and sat upon. And when we think about, money corrupts. How does money corrupt? Money corrupts if we start hoarding it. If we're thinking about billionaires out there who are sitting on these vast chunks of money that could actually transform the lives of thousands and thousands and thousands of people and do tremendous good in the world. If you're sitting on it and hoarding it, it's kind of like you are entrapping a living, breathing entity that wants to flow, wants to go out there, wants to do good, wants to create, right? And so that's where this kind of money corrupts. Yeah, there's some truth in that. But again, it's not the money itself. One is trying to live and breathe. It's what you do with it, right? But if you're actually sitting there thinking, okay, I want to make all these billions because I want it to go out, and I want to send it out, and I want to invest it, and I want to help animals, I want to help the planet, I want to help people, I want to do all these incredible things with it, and it becomes like a tool for good, then it's a different energy entirely, right?
Yeah.
The same substance. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good way of looking at it. And I can feel that. Like I can feel that when I'm talking to some of the people, the clients that I have, and when they're sitting on it, it's like when you don't know what to do with your money, like you're just earning, and it's just sitting there. It almost feels like the pressure's getting more, because you're like, what should I be doing with this? Right. That's always the question that I always find myself helping them answer, is like, what do you do with this? So I think that's what I think we all know how to make money, right? For the vast majority. Like I think that's the easy part, right? You provide a service, you go to a job, like you make money, but it's like, what do I do beyond that? Like, what do I do with it now that I have it? And I think that's the missing step for a lot of people. And it, like you said, we're trying to control this thing that wants to be out in the world, wants to flow.
Yeah. And actually, to your point, right, where you said earlier about how does money and love tie together, the question is always, well, what do I want to create? From my perspective, right? Because so much of it is like, well, you go make the money and then you're done, sorted. Or you go get married and you're done, happily ever after. No, the story continues, right? It's not that you go suddenly get a big paycheck, or you start making X amount of money and you're finished. What do you actually do with it? And the same thing, you don't just get married and then your story ends. It's like, what do you want to create with this marriage? And that's where so many couples go wrong, because we're not taught in society about what happens after you've won the lottery, or what happens after you have the happily whatever, the marriage. Yes. We don't talk about what happens after. And the question there to me is like, well, now that I have this privilege, what do I want to create with it? What do I want to do with that money? What do I want to do with this partnership? Where do I want to go? What do I want to build?
I love that. Yeah. It when you start thinking that way, like, what do I want to build? It becomes less about you, and it becomes more about what you're going to do with that. Right. And the shift goes away from you. And I feel like when I think that way, I almost feel less pressure on me.
Yeah.
Right. To do certain things. Right. Yeah. It becomes less about how much money am I making, more so like who am I going to help today? Right. Like, how am I going to help them today? Like, is it with the money that I make? Is it with the skill set that I have? But it becomes less about me, and more about how can I grow this? How can I let this thing flow? I love that. I love, we talked about one of your posts before about conflict, right? And I want to touch a little bit based on this, just because the vast majority of the clients that I work with are women. And there's a massive shift, right, that is happening, is, especially where a lot of women are becoming breadwinners, right, in the relationship. And, that even happened in my relationship, right? And so that dynamic, right, shifting away from traditional, what we've seen, right, where males traditionally are the breadwinners. And so since money can be a massive source of conflict, right, in a relationship, how do we improve those conversations around money with that dynamic, if that makes sense?
Yeah, such a great question. And I mean, in an ideal world, in a dream world, both individuals are doing their own separate work on their relationships with money, because money's crucial.
Yep.
And they neutralize it, right? The goal is never to make money something like amazing or something that you love, nor is it about making money something that you villainize and you're afraid of. It's just about neutralizing it so that the energy around the money is kind of neutral and not taking away your own charge. So that's the individual work that we need to be doing. But to get there, you can do the couples work, which is going to boil down to, well, what are your money stories? What are your beliefs around money? What's been your relationship with money? What do you want money for? We don't ask that question enough, right? There's a kind of assumption that like we're building all this wealth. What for? What for? What are we building the wealth for? That's something that I know I've really embarked upon that question as I've, as my husband and I have been kind of navigating, like, where do we live, right? Because we met and we started out living in Spain with this hypothesis that our cost of living would be really low, and neither of us would be really driven by money. And then as time went on and my business started to really kind of grow and succeed and money started coming in, and he was struggling in Spain to find healthy work that he actually enjoyed. And we were kind of questioning, like, well, where do we move to? We're now in Vancouver, cost of living is much higher. Do we want our money to be going on like housing though? Is that what we want to go on? And if so, what's the cutoff point, right? So these kind of questions are like, well, what's it all for? What are we building together? Where are we heading to? What's freedom to us? What's the purpose behind all of this? These are really illuminating conversations. And actually, a lot of people, I'm willing to bet, won't know what it's for, right? Because we've just been conditioned, like, you have to go make the money. For what? Right? I had a client, my goodness, he came to me and he was like, I want to work on my money blocks. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, how much do you want to make? He's like, 20 mil. I'm like, 20 mil? Okay. Why? And he's like, well, that's what I need to retire. I'm like, is it? Where do you live? I've never heard of anyone needing 20 mil to retire. Yeah. And we kind of broke it down. And in the end, it's like, no, you don't need 20 mil. That was just a number that he had deduced based on, again, his own conditions, his own story that he needed. And the pressure that he was under to go and achieve that was suffocating. And it was leading him to disconnect from his wife, to be grinding, to be alone in the office, right? Again, why? You don't need that. Nothing wrong with going to have that. By all means, go have that. But let there be a purpose to it. So yeah, I think having these exploratory dialogues around why, what, where's it from, can really help bring a couple closer together.
I love that, because you hinted at something earlier, and it's not something that we're necessarily taught to do, right? Yeah. We're not taught to ask the questions why or how or what's that for. Like, yeah, like $20 million. Like, where are you living, man? Like, are you living on Mars? Like, are you like what is your life gonna look like? And that's like a big thing, as like, you talked about, in the sense, like, we all get past this. We all have that basic need of security, right? Yeah. And for a lot of people, they get stuck there, right? They don't never feel fully secure in their situation. And so they can't begin to think about, why and how and all those things. But once you get past that first need, like once you feel that need is met, you can then begin to look at those things like, $20 million. Well, why do you need that? Well, I never thought about it. And it's okay not to have the answer, right? But you should at least start asking the question, right, behind that, and start to explore that, right? Like when I ask people that question, like, why do you want that? And they say, well, I don't know. And they get flustered. It's like, I don't need you to get flustered. I need you to think differently about where you're going, because that's important to not only you, but your relationship. And that's every relationship that you're in. That's not just romantic. That's professionally, that's personally, that's all.
Yeah. And you've hit on a really important thing there, right? Kind of inadvertently, that so many relationships fall apart because people are chasing what they want. And I bang on about this a lot in my content, is how we know what we want. We want the blah, 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 the 500K salary. We want the nice house. We want the nice car. We want the whatever. But what do you actually need, right? Like, what are the needs beneath the wants? Most people don't know. They're fully blocked. Most people don't believe they're even worthy of getting their needs met. So they've never really gone there. And if they try to go there, then it's like, oh, let's just diminish that. And they know what they want and they're chasing what they want, but that's actually not going to make you happy, because there's always going to be another thing, because hello, capitalism and marketing, right? There's always going to be a new model for you to aspire to. It's never going to be enough. So the questions here are like, well, what is it that you need? What are you trying to get fulfilled here? Again, you probably don't need that 20 mil unless you have a really strong need. Fair enough, for helping people at scale and actually having lofty philanthropic goals. Fair enough. That's very different. Again, do you need that 20 mil, or can you help at a more localized level, right? There's these kind of more rich conversations than just, I just want it because I want that nice, I know nothing about cars, that nice Aston Martin. I don't know.
That sounds like a very prestigious car. I think I've seen them on TV before, but yes. I see it a lot. Like, you're asking people, can I just make, I just need, if I could just make this amount, I'd be happy. Right. And I love hearing that, because I'm like, okay, well, when you get to that number, what happens? Like, what does that actually mean to be happy? And it's like, I think there was a study done where they were asking people, like, oh, if I made, $200,000, they asked them the next year, like, are you happy? And they're like, well, no, I'd be happy at 225. Right. And it's like, okay, they get to 225 and it's like, oh, like, are you happy now? And they're like, no, 300,000 seems like a good number. Right. It's always pushing that, because we're pushing for the external. We're not pushing for the internal.
Totally. I see that in my own business.
Yeah.
I was talking to because I have my own subconscious mind coach. I'm a fiend. I've got a subconscious mind money coach I'm working with, she's cool, right? She's on like a whole nother planet in terms of the wealth that she's created. And I was sharing with her how, I was like, this is so cool. It's June the 2nd, and just kind of revenue wise, I'm like, in 2 days I already have enough. I have that I need to have a comfortable life. And this has never happened to me. And then I was like, okay, well, what now? What now? And what we're kind of exploring, which is really interesting, is, do you need to have that fire up your ass to stay motivated? Right? Again, that struggle. Or is it actually, again, it's not about the money. The money is irrelevant. What are you creating beyond that? And it's, again, this other kind of playing field that we're in. So, I don't even know why I was mentioning that.
We were talking about just we were talking about wanting more, right? The next dollar, the next, like, oh, I made 225, but I really would feel comfortable even though I said 225 would make me happy.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It really doesn't mean anything, right? And it's been so fascinating for me to kind of sit in the space of like, okay, well, I'm 2x like comfortable living. So, well, what now? Do I just take my foot off the gas, or am I, my motivation, if there's any big animal philanthropists out there who want to partner, is I really care about animals. And actually, the more that I've done my own work around money, the more I've kind of distilled into, well, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I really need? What do I really care about? And I love the relationship work that I do. Of course, I really want to grow and scale that. And I'm very cognizant that in order to scale that, because I don't come from a wealthy family, I'm going to have to reinvest to get myself in certain spaces. That's fine. And on the back of that, it's like, I really care about animals. I really want to help them. So getting into that kind of, again, creative space of what's it all for? That's the real motivation, right?
Yeah.
It's a different type of motivation. It's a more spirit-led, a more nourishing motivation, rather than kind of that burnout energy of just grinding for the sake of grinding, not knowing what you're grinding for.
Yeah. It becomes more about the legacy. And I think that's a beautiful place to be when you're thinking about like beyond you, right? Like bigger than you. And that's where I'm at, is like, what can I do? Or, what I'm doing now is like for the things that I love, right? And the things that I want to see in the world, and the things that, the change that I want to see. And, there's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but I love it. And it's like, it says, if somebody could breathe easier because you lived, that is a fulfilled life. And that's what I think about when I'm thinking about building a business is like, if someone could breathe a little bit easier because I was, I provided something that helped them, then it was all worth it. Right.
Yeah.
It was all worth it to me. Yeah. So that was a great answer to that question. And I have one final question, right? And it's going to be a little bit of a shifting gears. And I think, again, I reference your posts a lot because they're so good. And there was a post that I want to talk about, not in particular, but really just the thought behind it. And the one thing, you talk about intimacy a lot, right? And one of the things that comes up a lot is like financial intimacy, right? Not just budgets, right? Not just talking about the numbers, but being able to share vulnerably, right? Not just with your partner, but with yourself, I think is important. And so what are the biggest blocks that you've seen, regarding emotional relationship intimacy, and how do we start to, I know how to start to heal them because I follow your content, but for those that are, they're listening to this and have no idea where to start, right? How do we start to heal those things? How do we start to move past those things?
Yeah, really, really great question. And I like the point that you made around the financial intimacy piece, right? Because intimacy is about your unique connection to yourself, to others, to other items in your life, right? Finances are definitely one of them. Intimacy with your body, right? Your connection to your own body. Intimacy with like nature and the planet and how you feel upon it. There's so many different types of intimacy out there. And I think the most crucial step, which is almost kind of the hardest, is going to be to become honest and aware of the fact that you even have blocks, right? Because so many of us just assume that we're actually okay. And what we're seeing externally is a reflection of quote unquote reality. And it is just the way it is. And actually, that's not true at all. We know from everything that we learn about the subconscious mind that the external reality that you're seeing is a construct based on your own internal unique filters, based on your own unique worldview. Your worldview is built on your beliefs, and your beliefs are going to contribute to your blocks. So the world that I'm seeing is going to be different to the world that you're seeing. So if I'm walking around with certain struggles or certain beliefs or certain ideas or anxieties or triggers or panics around money, around love, I can bet that that's not actually an accurate reflection of what's going on externally. That's probably going to be something internally that's flaring up, right? And we know that because everyone's going to be so different. Again, I was just with this other client, we were doing this exercise on his kind of upper limit, his comfort level with wealth. And we were playing around, 20K, how do you feel? He's like, easy, 30K a month. And he's like, yeah, 30K is fine, 40K a month. So yeah, fine. 50K is like, getting a little bit of tension in my chest. I'm like, okay, cool. So we kind of notice that, right? That's going to be different to someone else who I might be working with. And for them, it's like 200K a month. It's kind of, no big deal. So everyone's going to have a very unique setup. And for someone else, it might be like 2K is like already too much. So again, everyone's going to be very unique. So I think just becoming aware and owning the fact that your worldview, your experience, your triggers, your pains, your kind of problems are, for the most part, going to be internally created. Not saying that they're all external, but that they're all internally created. Of course, there are many external conditions.
Of course,
exacerbate things, right?
Yep.
But you have a lot more power and a lot more ownership that way. I always have to tell my relationship clients, just assume that the relationship is 100% your responsibility. Not saying that it is, but let's just assume that it is, because it gives you so much more power and control to change things, right? So in noticing that, okay, I have tension around this area, or like I'm stressed about this area, or no, this doesn't actually feel so good to me, right? Like this doesn't feel like, even I'm noticing it, I look at my calendar, I'm like, yeah, I don't actually think I like working a 50-hour work week. I just don't think this is for me. No, I feel a block here. Great, good data. I don't have to suffer through this. I don't have to just accept it as like, well, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
To be an entrepreneur, I got to hustle and grind. No, you don't. Again, go on TikTok. There's people printing cash there with like one little reel.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to grind to make money. That is a false belief. It's kind of come full circle here. So again, if you notice any tension, anything you don't like in your life, anything that feels off, anything that feels draining, that is your invitation to go inward and start exploring, what do I believe about this? Where might I be blocked? Whose belief is this, right? Is this even mine? Or is it like my mother's? Or is it, right? Whose is it? And so beginning to build that vocabulary of what's actually going on here. And there are different tools and techniques that you can use to drill down quite quickly. And then once you've started to identify the different blocks, I love to do this with my clients, is like we just build a bit of an inventory of, okay, based on who you are, based on like the full kind of audit, even though I hate the word audit, but you have these 20, 25 main blocks that show up across all arenas of your life. We know what they are. And then you want to move to the actual clearing process, right? Which these blocks live in your subconscious mind. You need your conscious mind to get awareness of them, but then to actually shift them, you need subconscious mind techniques. So that when you can do all manner of different things, right? Obviously work with a qualified practitioner and start shifting them, start clearing them out. Because the best thing about this is you shift a block, the other blocks are going to loosen and get weaker. And again, your whole external reality is going to shift. Because if I'm walking around, for example, with the belief that money has to be a struggle, money's a struggle, it's got to be hard to make money, then guess what? I'm going to go and make all of this money and then find myself struggling, which I kind of raised my hand a little bit. I'm like, oh, I think there's a little block here I need to clear. Okay, cool. All right. I wouldn't have known this when I was in corporate because I wasn't at this level of wealth, right? As you up level, new blocks are going to come up. New blocks are going to come up. Like there's all this stuff that's going to come up. That's great. That's just the evolution process. That's growth, right? If you didn't have the blocks, you wouldn't have the kind of the tenacity to go and learn and grow, and you wouldn't upskill, you wouldn't become better, you wouldn't grow, you'd be stagnant. So this is all good stuff. So again, you want to clear them out at the kind of the root cause. And then once you clear them out, then you get to start getting creative around, okay, well, who am I really? What do I actually really need? What will actually make me happy? What do I want to create here? And then you go and apply the strategies to go and create it, right? So it's kind of like a 4-pronged process, but it really all starts with you even just acknowledging that I don't have to struggle. Again, one final thing I'll say is I have a guy here in Vancouver who, he's a fabulous friend of mine. It's so interesting how he just does not believe in the power of the subconscious mind. He just doesn't believe in it. He just doesn't believe that he creates his reality, right? He just believes that like the world is crap and the world is what it is and life is hard and everything's just crap. This guy was making $120,000 a month at one point, right? He was making like very, very obscenely good money. And the world was still crap. It was still crap. His relationships were crap. He kept losing money. He hated the tax man. He had these like weird health conditions. He's lonely. He hates the city. He's like, it's all just so negative. And I have quite a few people like this. And I will only ever work with them if they're willing to accept that actually, I am in part responsible. Some people would say fully responsible for what I experience, for what I see, for what I create. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's the best pill to swallow. It's the best medicine because suddenly you have a lot of power and control to change it.
I love that last thought. And I think that's really important for people to understand is when you take ownership of that, right? And you know that you have a part to play in that, that can be scary, right? To be like, oh, that I kind of did this. Like I've created this world that I'm in, that's like this guy, for instance, right? A very negative world, right? Everything is negative, right? Yes, he makes great money, right? Obscene amount of money, but like everything in the world is just like, it's bad, right? And it's just like, but so it's scary to be like, yeah, this is my fault. I did this, like I'm the one to blame. But there's also so much power behind that because we get to realize, hey, I created that world, but I can create a different world, right? And I can create a different world, going back to what you said, by removing some of those blocks, right? And every level that we graduate towards, right? Like we move up in, yes, there's more blocks there, and they're probably bigger blocks because we're now reaching a higher level than we've ever been in before. And now that just requires more subconscious mind work, right? It requires a deeper dive. It's not just the surface level answers anymore that are going to help you move on through it. It's the deeper work. So I love that you brought that up.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, right? Like my husband says you're obsessed with subconscious blocks, and I'm like, but I am, because they really are everywhere. And I think, again, when you can understand just how powerful every single thought you think, when people are into like manifestation, think, oh, manifestation's me writing out my goals, setting an intention, doing a little prayer, doing a little dance, whatever you need to do. No, every single thought is manifesting. Every single thought, every breath you take, you're manifesting. It's that powerful. So the sooner we can actually get our heads around this and connect with it and start harnessing it, that is the work. Really, that is the work, right? And working on a kind of very granular inner block, internal level, and clearing. The sooner we can do that, the sooner we can have the lives of our dreams. This is not for the faint-hearted.
Yes, I love how you ended that. Not for the faint of hearted. Yes, is. But it's a journey worth taking, and and there's so many people that will never take that journey, but the ones that do, right, are the ones that get to live that life. And so, thank you so much for today. This was amazing. I knew it was going to be amazing. So again, thank you taking time out for us today to just give us a little bit of glimpse into your mind, right, and how you think and how you feel. And so I really appreciate you opening up and everything. And so I just want to say this, somebody might be watching this and wants to know more about you, learn more about you. Where can they find you? What platforms can they find you on? You have your own podcast, so make sure you mention that. But yeah, how can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. Like, you are such a gem on LinkedIn, an authentic voice amongst all the bots. I really appreciate you. Good old authentic relationships.
Yeah, who would have thought, right?
Right. But yeah, you can find me on www.Katarina, Katarina Polonska, Polonska.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Same name, Katarina Polonska. Find me on LinkedIn, drop me a DM. I'm on TikTok, Katarina.Polonska, and I'm on Instagram, Katarina Polonska. Just my name. Type it into Google, find me on a platform, reach out. I do have a free 20-minute masterclass. It's more geared at people who are deciding whether to still go in their relationship or who are feeling a little bit stuck in their relationship. Well worth checking out. And yeah, to your point, I've got my own podcast as well, which is definitely relationship centric. But we talk about subconscious blocks and how to clear them out there too.
Yeah. And I'm going to put all that in the show notes. So just you guys can click some links, follow, go check her out. Like I said, great information. I just love how you always cut to the heart of the matter. I appreciate that. No fluff. That's another thing I love. But I'm thankful for our connection, and I'm looking forward to more of this, more conversations down the road. But I appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is. But anyways, thank you so much.
No, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, anyways, guys, thank you for joining today's podcast. Make sure you go follow her, and we will see you on the next one. Have a good one.